Karen, I've got it on my screen that we're live streaming now, is that right?
Yeah, we're ready to go, Gillian, thanks.
Thank you. So let's do the welcome and introduction. So I'm introducing myself. I'm Gillian Beasley, the returning officer. We have Fiona Macmillan, Director of Law and Governance. Rachel Edwards, Head of Constitutional Services. I think everybody knows Rachel. Mark Empson, Electoral Manager, and he will be conducting today's session with you all. Ben Stevenson, who's our Compliance and Fraud Manager. And we also are joined by Cambridgeshire Police Superintendent Andy Jipp and Superintendent Kate Anderson, who will take us through some of the issues around fraud, compliance, etc. So welcome everybody again. As I said, this is going to be in two parts. Part one is going through the details, which I think many of you are familiar with. And then part two in April will be taking us through what a COVID-safe election looks like and how we're going to conduct the count and other matters. So Mark, over to you to lead the session today. Thank you.
Thank you, Gillian. Good evening, everybody. Just a further bit of housekeeping before I start. If you haven't done so already, it would be really helpful for the elections team if you could just pop your full name, the party you're planning on standing for, and the ward you're standing in, or the parish council you're standing for, in the chat. So we'll be able to communicate with you further after this briefing if we need to. Thank you very much for that. So the briefing for this evening is going to go over the processes leading up to polling day on Thursday, the 6th of May. I'll be explaining about who's who, the election timetable, your qualifications and disqualifications, the nomination process, election agents and postal vote process, as well as candidates' expenses, and we will also talk about electoral integrity. So with regards to who's who, Gillian has two hats as far as elections are concerned. The first being the returning officer, who is responsible for the running of the elections, and the electoral registration officer, being responsible for maintaining the register of electors and absent voters lists. The returning officer and ERO for Peterborough is Gillian Beasley. As you will no doubt be aware, there are some other elections going on as well in the Police and Crime Commissioner elections and Combined Authority mayoral elections. The individual tasked with the responsibility of administering them is John Hill from East Cambs. So for the election timetable, we'll be publishing the notice of election on the 29th of March. This will mean that nominations will commence from the 30th of March at 10 AM, and they will go on until 4 PM on the 8th of April. Again, on the 8th of April is the deadline for anyone wishing to withdraw their candidacy and to notify us of any election agents that you will have. Publication of the statement of persons nominated will be the following day on the 9th, and the deadline to receive applications for anyone wanting to register to vote at these elections is the 19th of April. We will be delivering our first batch of postal votes around the 20th of April, and the deadline for anyone who is not currently registered for a postal vote or postal proxy, they will need to get that into us before 5 PM again on the 20th of April. Our postal vote opening sessions will start at the Town Hall on the 22nd of April, and these sessions will commence from 10 AM daily. The deadline for receiving new applications to vote by proxy is the 27th of April at 5 PM. Publication of a notice of poll and situation of polling stations is by the 27th of April. Deadline for notification of appointment of polling agents and counting agents is the 28th of April. And the first day electors can apply for a replacement to their lost or spoilt postal vote is the 29th of April. Of course, we have polling day on Thursday, the 6th of May, hours of polls 7 AM till 10 PM. The last time we can reissue a spoilt or lost postal vote is 5 PM on polling day. That's the same deadline for anyone wishing to apply for an emergency proxy. The last time that we can alter the register due to a clerical error or a court appeal is 9 p.m. Our last postal vote opening session will commence at Peterborough Arena at 9 p.m. Verification of local government, combined authority mayoral and the police and crime commissioner, as well as parish election ballots, again at Peterborough Arena, will commence from 10 p.m. with the ballots face up from that point. We propose to count the local government and parish election ballot papers on Friday, the 7th of May. This will commence from 10 a.m. and the declaration will follow that. We will confirm more accurate timings at a further briefing. On the Saturday, the 8th of May, we will be counting both the combined authority mayoral and police and crime commissioner ballots. And for your return of election expenses for those standing in the parish council elections, that will be by the 3rd of June, and for local elections by the 11th of June. And by law, we will also be writing out to any postal voters whose vote was rejected, and we need to do that by the 6th of August. Okay. So I'm just going to go over the qualifications for those standing for election. So candidates must satisfy the criteria on the day they are nominated and on polling day. So it needs to be at least 18 years of age, be a British or qualifying Commonwealth with indefinite leave to remain, Irish, member state of the EU national. Qualifying means someone who has indefinite leave to enter or remain in the UK. We'll also need to qualify under one of the following rules: be a registered local government elector for the local authority area, occupy as owner or tenant any land or premises in the local authority area during the whole 12 months preceding nomination, have their place of work, this could be voluntary, during the last 12 months in the local authority area, or live in the local authority area in the 12 months leading. The qualification to be a registered elector is an ongoing qualification and must be satisfied for the duration of the term of office, should a candidate be successful at these elections. It's important to mark all the qualifications that you do qualify for on your nomination paper when you're completing it. It's worth noting if someone does not need to be in paid employment for the qualification for working within the principal authority area. For parish council elections, the qualification of living in the local authority area is different. It includes the parish or within 4.8 kilometres of the parish. So disqualifications. A person cannot be a candidate if employed by the local authority or holds paid office under the authority. Candidates may be employed by the local authority if they work at certain schools or fire service or police or health service. If someone is subject to a bankruptcy restrictions order in England or Wales, they've been sentenced to a term of imprisonment of 3 months or more without the option of a fine during 5 years before polling day, have been disqualified under the Audit Commission Act 1998, serving disqualification due to being found guilty of corrupt or illegal practice by an election court, or hold a politically restricted post. A person may also be disqualified from the election if they have been disqualified from standing for election to a local authority following a decision of the first tier tribunal for England and Wales. Political restrictions do not apply parish council elections. I do need to note that if any candidates are in doubt as to whether they are disqualified, they must do everything they can to check that they are not disqualified before submitting their nomination papers. Candidates must be sure they are not disqualified, as they will be asked to sign one of the required nomination papers to confirm that they are not disqualified. It is a criminal offence to make a false statement on a nomination paper as to qualifications to be elected. So if a candidate is in any doubt, they should contact their employer, consult the legislation, or if necessary, take their own independent legal advice. The returning officer will not be able to confirm whether or not a candidate is qualified. So submitting nomination papers, the deadline, the absolute deadline is 4 p.m. on the 8th of April. Please take care when completing your nomination papers as mistakes can invalidate your nomination. Candidates or agents must make sure the form is completed correctly. Take your time and use the Electoral Commission's guidance if you're unsure with anything. We're happy to check any papers informally just to make sure that everything is correct. I must note nomination papers must be delivered in person. They cannot be delivered by post, fax, email, or any other electronic means. There's no restriction as to who can deliver the nomination papers, but should be someone that you trust. We'll continue with the appointment system for delivery of nomination papers this year, and you can book appointments by emailing nominations2021@peterborough.gov.uk, or you can also telephone the elections office if that's easier for you. When nomination papers are dropped off to the town hall, we will ask for you to leave us a telephone number, and then we can contact you if there are any issues with those papers. You will not be allowed to wait for your nomination papers to be processed at the town hall. Please come to the back of the town hall for your appointment time, and someone will come out and collect the papers from you. And just to make our life a bit easier in these current times, can you please try and refrain from stapling your nomination papers? So nomination form, you need to include your name and home address. You can use a commonly used name. Commonly used forename and surname, if used, are the only names shown on the ballot paper. Use of commonly used name section is optional. So even if you are commonly known by another name, you may leave this blank and stand under your actual name if you so wish. On the description, there are 3 options. You can leave this blank. If you're standing as an independent candidate, you can write independent, or party candidates can use the party name or description authorised by a certificate issued on behalf of the party nominating officer. You need to make sure that the description, if you are standing for a party, is written on the nomination form and it matches the description on the certificate from the authorised nominating officer. Parish council candidates may use any description they wish, up to 6 words, as long as there are no vulgarities and it doesn't confuse with any registered political party name or description. However, party candidates will still need a certificate of authorisation at parish level. Okay, so in these auspicious times, new for 2021, the government have changed the way nomination papers need to be completed. So for this year's local elections, only 2 subscribers will be required for the nomination paper. So that's 1 proposer and 1 seconder. Separate front sheets can be used to get subscribers to sign to avoid potential trace contact, but you must ensure that they are fully completed with the candidate's details and any party descriptions before the proposer and seconder sign those. Parish council nominations remain the same with the 2 subscribers, a proposer and a seconder, but again, separate forms can be used if you think this is a good idea whilst collecting your signatures to avoid passing on the virus. So your consent to nomination form must include your name and address, which area you're standing in, confirmation of the qualifications that apply. You must have at least 1 qualification, but as I've said before, you should select all that apply to you. Date of birth and signature, your witness name, address and signature. The witness should witness the candidate's signing of the form and then sign it themselves. The consent to nomination, candidates must not sign the form if they are not qualified to stand. So in recent years, the Commission have added a home address form. So the requirement for candidates to have their home address published on the ballot paper and statement of persons nominated has now been removed. The option to omit the candidate's home address can be found on the home address form in your nomination pack. The form must be attested by the same person who witnessed the consent to nomination form. So you just need to put their name and address on that part of the form. If you do not wish to have your home address appear on the ballot paper or statement of persons nominated, complete part 2 of the form giving the name of the authority area in which you live. So I would imagine for the most of you that will clearly be Peterborough. A certificate of authorisation. Party candidates must have written permission to use the party name or description from the nominating officer or someone appointed to act on their behalf. The certificate may allow the use of the party name or a particular description, and it will allow a candidate to choose whether to use the party name or descriptions registered to use with the Electoral Commission. If the certificate of authorisation states a particular description or party name to be used, then that must be used by the candidate exactly. If the certificate allows the candidate to choose, then they must choose either the party name or description registered by the Electoral Commission. Party names and descriptions are on the Electoral Commission website and must match exactly. No alteration is permitted. If you are going to use a party description, this must be added to the nomination paper before anyone subscribes to it. If not, you'll either have to get the form completed again or forego the use of the description altogether. Candidates who use party descriptions can have an emblem. Candidate must ask for it themselves, and there is a form in the nomination pack that can be used. Candidates and agents should look at the Electoral Commission website and use description of the one they want from that website. The election agent, their main responsibility is the proper management of the candidate's campaign, particularly its financial management. Notification of appointment of election agents must reach the returning officer by 4 p.m. on the 8th of April. If no election agent is submitted, you will become your own agent by default. Agents, including a candidate acting as their own agent, can be replaced at any time. There are no election agents for parish council elections. Other agents for these elections can be appointed to attend postal vote openings, polling stations, and the count on your behalf. You must give notice in writing of any people appointed as polling and counting agents by the 28th of April. The appointment of postal voting agents attending a particular opening session must be made before the start of that session. The number of agents may need to be reduced this year from previous years to allow for social distancing. We will be issuing updated guidance on the appointment of these agents at a future briefing after the nomination period has concluded. Again, due to the postponement of these elections from last year, the term of office will have changed slightly. So when the postponed elections take place in 2021, the term of office for the new councillors will be reduced by 1 year in order to maintain the original pattern of elections. So the date of retirement will be 2024 for all city and parish councillors elected, and the term of office for the by-elections taking place for Fletton and Woodstone will be 2 years, and for Thorney Parish will be 1 year. Access to electoral register and absent voters list. Once someone becomes a candidate, they are entitled to receive a free copy of the electoral register and list of people by post or proxy. This is known as the absent voters list, and this will be for the ward or parish in which they are contesting. Any request for updates to the register or absent voter list will be sent within 5 working days of receipt of the written request. The request must come in writing. That includes email, but we do have to receive that in writing. Most registered political parties already have a copy of the electoral register and absent voting lists. When in possession of electoral lists, they must only be used for permitted purposes, and these are to complete a nomination form, to help in your campaign, and to check that donations and loans are permissible. Any person found breaching the restrictions of use of the electoral register could face an unlimited fine and/or up to 6 months in prison. Further details of this can be found in the Electoral Commission's guidance. So for registration, as a candidate or someone working for a candidate, you are in a unique position to encourage people to register to vote. You should encourage people to register as soon as possible whilst following social distancing rules. The deadline to apply to register to vote for these elections is the 19th of April. The easiest way to register is online using the www.gov.uk/register to vote website. Individuals can also register via telephone by calling our helpline on 01733 452 249. When discussing registering to vote with individuals, you will need to make them aware that they will need their national insurance number and their date of birth. People who don't have their national insurance number to hand can still register, but they will need to provide further information. This will include things like a photographic passport, driving license or identity card, or a combination of non-photographic identification if they're not in possession of those. Absent voting, if you are encouraging people who don't have a postal vote to apply for one, make sure you explain that they will only qualify if they are or will be registered. The deadline to register for a postal vote is 5 p.m. on the 20th of April. The initial tranche of postal votes will be delivered around the 20th of April. If you are encouraging people to apply for a postal vote, please encourage them to apply early. We will be, as I say, sending out our initial postal votes around the 20th of April. That will include anyone who has successfully applied for a postal vote before the 16th of March. The second tranche of postal votes, so basically anyone who applies for one after the 16th of March, they are due to be sent out the week commencing the 26th of April. Just to note as well that Peterborough City Council have written to over 12,000 electors on the clinically or extremely vulnerable list to advise them of their voting options and what to do should they wish to apply for a postal or proxy vote. So campaigning do's and don'ts. Do use imprints on all your campaign material, including websites. On printed materials such as leaflets and posters, candidates must include the name and address of the printer and the promoter. For social media, you should display your full imprint details on your profile page. You must comply with planning rules in relating to advertising. Do make sure outdoor posters are removed 2 weeks after the election. Do not produce any material that looks like a poll card, and do not pay people to display your adverts unless they display adverts as part of their normal business. Campaigners are an essential element of a healthy democracy, but their activities should not bring into question the integrity of the electoral process. Electoral registration and absent vote applications must conform to the requirements of electoral law, and they must contain the electoral registration officer's address for their forms returned. If any forms are sent back to your offices, you must ensure that they are sent back to the electoral registration officer unaltered within 2 working days. Do not encourage postal ballot pack redirection. Do not encourage electors to appoint a campaigner as a proxy. The full code of conduct for campaigners can be found on the Electoral Commission website, where you can also find a quick guide in relation to handling postal votes. And there is the address there. So code of conduct still, postal ballot packs, we request that they should never be touch the ballot paper, never observe electors completing their postal vote, never handle or take any completed ballot paper or postal ballot pack from a voter. Campaigning outside polling...
You gotta do is expel this nigger.
Excuse me. Campaigning outside polling stations, you are allowed to put your message to voters on polling day, including public spaces outside the polling stations. You must keep access to polling places and the pavements around polling places clear to allow voters to enter. And you must follow the government's social distancing rules at all times. The government have advised that they're going to allow for outdoor campaigning. It's essential campaigning to be allowed in the run-up to the polls on the 6th of May. An informed electorate is vital to ensure that voters can make a reasoned choice for whom they vote for in the UK. The government is to allow for 2 months of outdoor campaigning in the run-up to May's polls to support free and fair elections. It's essential that political campaigning continues to show social responsibility, and parties, agents and candidates ensure that their campaign understand the rules. Voters can continue to get campaigning information remotely, for example, through online campaign events and materials. Use of online and telephone campaigning remains the safest way to conduct campaigning for these polls on the 6th of May. Hustings and public meetings must take place remotely. Leaving home to undertake leafleting increases the risk of unnecessary social interactions and viral transmission, both during travel and on doorsteps. Campaigners should instead ensure leafleting is carried out through existing commercial delivery services wherever possible. Please conform to the government's guidelines whilst campaigning. So for postal votes. Code of conduct: no candidate or supporter should put themselves in a position where their honesty or integrity or that of the candidate or party can be questioned. Personal identifiers are matched to the postal vote application form. So for absent votes, you are required to provide a sample signature and date of birth on the application. This information is stored electronically and checked against
The niggers are taking our job.
This information is stored electronically and checked against the security statement returned with the elector's completed postal vote pack. This adds additional security steps to the processing of applications and verification of returned votes. Postal votes will be issued, as I've said, around the 20th of April. We will commence the opening from the 22nd of April in the reception room and council chamber of the town hall. If you wish to view this process, please notify the electoral services team. Here at Peterborough City Council, we have a TV screens set up against our scanners so that you will be able to see the identifiers going through and the reason for their rejection. Full COVID safety measures will be implemented at these opening sessions, and anyone attending should conform to the government's social distancing guidelines. More information on this will be available at our future briefing. So Thursday, the 6th of May, polling stations will open at 7 AM and close promptly at 10 PM. If there's any person in the queue at 10 PM, they are allowed to cast their vote, and the same applies if someone is in the queue delivering a postal vote pack. The polling station staff will be fully trained to deal with these situations should they arise. The elections office will be open from 6 AM for all queries relating to the administration of the election. Any queries relating to the regulatory issues or candidates campaigning, please contact the Electoral Commission. Polling station inspectors will be appointed to visit all polling stations within their specific area. This happens throughout the day. Each polling station inspector will have contact details of their specific polling stations and staff. The staff will also have their polling station inspectors' contact details. The inspectors are there to inspect the polling station and ensure that all relevant information is displayed correctly throughout the day. They're also there to deal with any issues that may arise. Polling stations will also collect postal votes that have been hand delivered to the polling station throughout the day and bring them back to the town hall for opening. The government has urged parties to keep the number of campaigners to a minimum during the pandemic. If you insist on using tellers, they must adhere to the rules. You need to note that tellers have no legal status at an election, and they are there to support their candidate or party. Tellers are not permitted in the polling station at any time, with the exception of casting their own vote. Tellers are not to obstruct a voter at any time or ask the voter which way they have voted. Tellers should respect the presiding officer's instructions at all times. Electors are not obliged to give tellers any information if they do not wish to do so. Please ensure that your tellers know the do's and don'ts regarding this process. Tellers are required to follow social distancing rules at all times, the same as everybody else. They will not be permitted access to foyers and entrance halls as they may have been in previous years, nor will they be given access to any tables or chairs. This is to reduce the risk of the transmission of COVID. New COVID safe measures will be implemented at polling stations for 2021, and further details on this will be given at the next briefing after nominations. Rosettes can be worn in party colours and of reasonable size. This is to assist voters in their decision making, making it clear that they are activists and not electoral officials. The rosette may display the name of the candidate, party, or the party emblem. Tellers must not wear, carry, or display any headwear, footwear, or any other apparel that carries any writing, picture, or sign relating to any candidate party other than a rosette. So verification and counting of votes. The verification of the local ballot papers will commence at Peterborough Arena on Thursday night at 10 p.m. The counting of the local ballot papers will take place on the Friday from 10 a.m. with the Police and Crime Commissioner and Combined Authority mayoral ballots being counted on the Saturday. Full details of the verification and count, including guidance on social distancing and the number of counting agents able to attend, will be discussed at the next candidates and agents briefing. A note on spending. Please ensure that spending is properly accounted for. Spending returns are made to the returning officer. Any specific questions relating to returns should be directed to the Electoral Commission. Spending returns are the responsibility of the election agent. Candidates' expenses are £806 plus 7p per local government elector, and that's based on for that ward. Joint candidates, so this will apply to the Clefton and Woodston by-election if there are any joint candidates. So joint candidates for the same party have lower spending limits as they are sharing some of the costs. You should calculate your spending limit as explained above and then reduce it by 25% for two candidates. Local government expenses need to be, you need to keep receipts for anything over £20, and for parishes, it's receipts for anything over £10. Full details of the candidates' election expenses can be found on the Electoral Commission website. So as with expenses, you will be required to make a return. These returns for the parish elections will be within 28 calendar days after the day of poll, which will be the 3rd of June. Local elections is 35 calendar days after the date of the result being declared, and this will fall on the 11th of June. So that's when the expenses must be returned by. The returning officer has a duty to inform the Electoral Commission if any returns have not been submitted. Returns are open to public inspection and copies can be bought. Returns will be made public by the returning officer and sample returns are sent to the Electoral Commission. Failure to submit any expenses returns is a criminal offence. I'm now going to hand over to Ben Stevenson, our compliance manager, who's going to go over how we deal with certain integrity issues.
Thanks, Mark. Our approach, as it has been in the past, is to disrupt and minimise the incidence of electoral fraud. So you can see on the screen some of the methods we may use, from looking at data from past elections to look at potential risks. We will review registration and absent voter applications, and we may review the existing entries once the register is published. We obviously do develop operational plans with the local police, as you can see by them attending today. We do explain what we're doing to prevent and detect electoral fraud, and we do record and report all allegations of electoral fraud to the police and work very closely with them, and we have done for a number of years. So we can go on to the next slide. Okay, so as in the past, if you've got any concerns at all regarding electoral fraud, there's Rachel's number there for you to contact, or the General Electoral Services number as well. and they'll pass messages on. You can also see there's an email address there if you want to report electoral fraud. And these are for those non-emergency circumstances. If there's an emergency or you need to phone the police, you can see obviously dial 101 or 999 if there's an emergency. Don't come to the council first if there's an emergency you need to deal with. And I'll hand back to Mark and the police.
Thank you, Ben. I believe we should have Superintendent Andy Jip online. Are you there, Andy?
Hi, Mark. Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
Have you got my slides, Mark? Yep, lovely job. Thank you very much. So good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Andy Jip. Some of you remember me before. I'm the head of policing for the Peterborough area and also Fenland as well. So to reinforce what has been said by both Mark and Ben so far, Cambridgeshire Constabulary, predominantly Peterborough, has a very strong relationship with Peterborough City Council. We've worked in partnership for a number of years in relation to electoral fraud, and we have a very strong, robust and thorough approach to how we're dealing with it. The first slide you saw there was in relation to the structure for reassurance that we put around this. And here in front of you now, you can see the issues that we will seek to deal with and investigate should needs be. There's a number of offences there that I don't intend this evening to go through every one of those with you in detail. I would ask you to, outside of this meeting, ensure that you're familiar with each offence and they understand the nuances that come with each of those ready for election day. Thank you. And there's some more detail on this slide pack in relation to the process that we will follow about how we work with Peterborough City Council. As you can see, the electoral staff carry out some checking, and then there's an escalation process should anything be found that should be brought to our attention. At that point, it will come to us. We will look at the preservation of evidence, and then if necessary, we will start interviewing people that we need to under caution, etc. It's really important that each of you understand the severity of any breaches. I have confidence and trust that you will, because as you can see there's quite a robust process in place should we need to deal with stuff. Next one, please, Mark. So the key messages, and we've reinforced this year on year, it's about prevention. It's about some of the information you have been seeing this evening, some of the information that you're already aware of in relation to how we should deal with this. Is about prevention and to provide you with information to inform your decisions, and utmost everything is to uphold fairness and integrity in the voting process. There's some information on here. As you can see, some numbers you can call. Tom Rose, you'll see there is a single point of contact for the police. Tom is a detective inspector with Cambridgeshire Constabulary, very experienced investigator. You've got his mobile number on there. If you have any concerns at all, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us. It's all about prevention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Superintendent. And I believe I'm just going to hand over to Gillian Beasley now, who would just like to say a few words.
Yep. First of all, can I thank Mark and everyone, Ben and Andy, for your presentation. But what I also wanted to do is offer you a sincere apology. We had some really nasty abuse introduced into this meeting, racial abuse, and we'll be talking to the police and colleagues about that. But we have excluded those individuals from this meeting. And I do sincerely apologise, and you can be absolutely sure that we will be talking about whether we can take any action. But I wanted you to know that we've noted that, we've taken action, and we'll be talking about it further. So really apologise for that. It did spoil what was, I thought, a really good presentation by Mark and by others, and hopefully helpful to you all in relation to preparing for this election. So with that apology, could I ask whether anybody would like to ask any questions now in relation to anything that's been said this evening? John Fox.
Yes, thank you, Gillian. My only concern is the colour situation. They have to be 2 metres apart by law. How are they going to read the numbers on the polling cards, or is it a question of shouting from a 2 metre distance, what's the number, and they shout the number back? Because I fear that people will approach and break that 2 metre rule to try to reach for the card and look at the card, because a lot of people are reluctant to give you the number anyway, but that's going to encourage people to tell us, if they're not instructed correctly, to reach out to grab it, and that's not on.
Mark, did you want to, or do you want me to answer that?
I can come in on that one, Gillian. As the government guidelines said, they are not encouraging tellers at polling stations, but they also can't stop it from happening. The key message is that they do need to keep to the 2 metre distancing, and they shouldn't really be requesting any other information from electors, and it's down to the elector whether or not they want to give that. My advice would be to keep any tellers to a minimum. I know we can't stop tellers; it's a part of the democratic process. But in these times, it's all about being sensible and trying to prevent the spread of the virus. All they can do is work within the boundaries of the government's guidelines and keep 2 metres away. There is no easy answer for that, Councillor Fox. And until the government turn around and say that tellers aren't allowed, which they won't do, then they'll have to find their own way to do it, but in the confines of the laws of social distancing.
Thank you, Mark. Councillor Sanford.
Yes, my question sort of follows on from John's question, actually. But thinking about the count, normally what happens is the party scrutineers sit right adjacent to the table with the people counting the votes, possibly only about just a few feet away from them. So how are you going to organise that to ensure that people are sufficiently far apart, but yet close enough to be able to observe things?
Nick, we're going to cover that at the next meeting. As we said, we're going to do the kind of count organisation and how we're going to set out the showground and how that's going to work in practice next time. And if anybody wants to, and we'll also talk about the polling station. So Councillor Fox's issue about how we're going to manage the throughput in the polling stations, because what we've had to do is we've had to do a risk assessment needs of polling stations. We've had to have a specific procedure for each polling station. And so we want to talk you through that in a bit more detail so we can explain how we're going to organise it the best way we can with the restrictions. So we want a separate meeting on that because we want to take a bit of time, so it gives you plenty of time to ask the questions and get familiar with how it's going to look, feel, and some of the concerns that you might have. So that's our next meeting, if we can put it till then. Thank you. I've got Imtiaz Ali.
Yeah, thank you. A couple of questions. Firstly, we were talking about the total election expenses. I think you said it was £806 plus 7 pence per elector. And then if you have a joint candidate, you've reduced that by 25%. I'm assuming you double it up first, 2 candidates, and then reduce the overall total by 25%.
So I think I got the question here. So if it's joint candidates for a ward, and going historically, I would only assume that would only happen in Fletton and Woodston, where there are 2 seats up for grabs. Then if it's a party candidate, then yes, for the second candidate, it's reduced by 25%. So it'll be 20. So for both candidates, they'll have 25% less of the total. Because they'll have a bigger spending power overall. The full details of joint candidacy can be found on the Electoral Commission's guidance for election.
Okay, thank you. And then the second question was just around polling stations. Where I think you might have mentioned, when are the polling stations going to be finalised? Because again, I think in Fletton Woodston there's a proposed change to one of the polling stations, so it'd be good for publication materials to know when that will be finalised.
It will be completely finalised when we publish the situation of polling stations, which is by the I think it's the 28th of April. The reason for that is obviously things can change even now. We have a list of all the polling stations, everything's booked, and information will be going out onto poll cards, but the definitive list won't be out until the end of April.
Thank you for those. John Peach. Hi, John. You're on mute, John.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. In the past, you've been very helpful and put sort of CCTV or video coverage at the entrance to polling stations in some of the inner city wards. I just wondered if you'd be able to do that again and what wards they would be.
Yeah, I can take that. Yes, absolutely, John. Our approach remains the same in that aspect.
Thank you.
Okay. Steve Corley.
Sent a text to Mark with a question. It's about the electoral register. I just wondered whether there's a link that anybody can use to see if they're registered at all.
There isn't a link, unfortunately. This is something we talk to the government about every year, about making it easier for people to find out whether or not they are registered. They can always contact our helpline, the 452249 number, and one of our contact centre staff can advise individuals if they are registered.
So if somebody tried to register to vote thinking they weren't registered, what would happen then if they're already registered and they tried to register? Do you know what message they get?
It will go into a queue. So they will complete the registration, they will go into a queue, and then we will obviously have it matched up at our system at the other end to say that they are already registered. So they will not register twice. The system won't allow them to do that.
No, but will they know that they're already registered? That's the point I'm trying to get.
Unfortunately not, and this is something again that we're speaking to the government about constantly, because duplicate registration is something that or people trying to register numerous times does happen. They don't get registered numerous times, but it creates more workload for us, and this is something that we are talking to the government about to make it easier for people to find out whether or not they are registered to vote.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any further questions for anybody on today's meeting? So I'm not seeing any. So what I'd like to do is thank everybody for joining our meeting today. Remember that we've got a second session, which is going to be really important for you to come to go through the kind of protocols at polling stations and also at the postal vote opening and at the count in a COVID safe way, and how we're going to design that the best we can. And as I say, we do want to spend some time with you to go through that. So look forward to seeing you on the next occasion. In the meantime, keep safe and well, and thank you for your time with us today. Thank you very much.